It's been a big summer for political news around the Commonwealth. So tonight, we want to check in with State House reporter for Kentucky Public Radio, Ryland Barton. Ryland, thanks so much for joining us because there is a lot to talk about. First up, I really want to ask you, Mike Pence, the vice president, is supposed to be in Manchester with Governor Matt Bevin tomorrow. Pence might want to just get an apartment in Kentucky. He's been here a few times now. Do you think Pence makes the kind of difference that, say, a visit from Trump would make for Matt Bevin, or just do you think it makes a difference, is what I'm asking?
Certainly, I'm sure that Donald Trump would attract a much bigger audience, would make get a whole lot more headlines and make a much bigger splash than Vice President Pence has or will in Kentucky. But I think that this is just kind of, this is what the White House is able to send along to aid Governor Bevin's campaign right now. This is the third time that Mike Pence has visited Kentucky during this year, during Governor Bevin's attempt to be reelected, to become the first two-term Republican governor in Kentucky history. And Pence already has a close relationship with the governor. He's the former governor of Indiana, so neighboring states, it's already in his neighborhood. I think that any little bit of connection that the governor can continue to establish and remind people of his tight connections with the White House, he's going to go for.
Speaking of visitors from neighboring states, Congressman Tim Ryan has said he wants to get a caravan together, go through Youngstown, Dayton, Cincinnati, and gather up as many people as he can and show up at Mitch McConnell's doorstep to ask him to do something about gun control. He had some protesters outside his home the other night. He didn't love that. I can't imagine if Tim Ryan showed up with a truckload full of protesters, what that would look like. Do you really see that happening?
It's important to remember it's Congressman Tim Ryan, but also presidential candidate Tim Ryan. So he's trying to, also get some headlines out there and, show up at the doorstep of Mitch McConnell, who's become this kind of boogeyman for Democrats. I think Democrats across the country are really trying to run against him. He's kind of, I think a lot in Kentucky, we've seen a lot of Nancy Pelosi being the boogeyman that Republicans have put forth to remind voters and try to tie Democrats to the top of the ticket. And I think that that's what Democrats are trying to do a little bit here. It's been interesting seeing what it's like when when this happens, when Mitch McConnell is the majority leader. This is the first time that he's running for re-election while being majority leader, and he's getting a whole lot more attention for it. Here a year and a half out until his race for re-election.
I think the Attorney General's race might be one of the more interesting ones of all of them, maybe one of the more brutal. I didn't love the stabs that Greg Stumbo or Daniel Cameron took at each other. I didn't think they were really founded well. But what's your take on that race?
Daniel Cameron, the Republican candidate for Attorney General, he's really I think that his tactic is similar to what other Republicans are doing, trying to nationalize the race. He was saying that Greg Stumbo is going to legalize sanctuary cities in Kentucky and block pro-life legislation and being an anti-abortion, against these abortion bills that have been passing out of the legislature. And then Greg Stumbo's tactic was really he was attacking Cameron's youth. At one point, he was comparing him to children visiting the Capitol. They're offensive statements that go back and forth. And one thing is, this is something that happens at Fancy Farm every year, but there's always kind of the nastiest of nastiest that kind of get made.
Okay, Ryland, I can't let you go without asking your opinion on this. Should Matt Jones get into the race?
Should he get into the race? Well, it's not for me to weigh in whether or not he should, but I think it's certainly an interesting question whether or not he will. I think he's might be a very different candidate from Amy McGrath, the Democrat who's already launched her bid for Senate. And he's criticized her launch of the campaign. And I think one thing that's interesting about Matt is that, he's somebody he has this giant fan base of people who pay attention to University of Kentucky basketball and sports, people who are possibly not otherwise engaged in politics. And a lot of times in politics, that's what it's all about, trying to get people who don't normally vote to come out and vote.
All right, Ryland Barton, thank you so much for your time and your insight. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Mary Jo.